Cool. I picked an easy name just for the moderators to have fun with. So I'm going to be talking about security practices in Galaxy, and I'm going to make a little bit of emphasis on point of care, but really this is going to be kind of a general guidelines to security practices. If you haven't met me, I'm Carrie Ganote. I work right here at Indiana University, and I had the unique pleasure of helping organize this whole thing. So that was a very awesome experience. And the people I worked with on this, I would like to point out Ben Fulton, who's hiding over there, and Anurag Shankar, who also works at IU, and he was kind of the motivating factor behind this, because he came up to us and he's like, you guys need to become HIPAA aligned with your Galaxy services. So, okay, let's go. I'm going to talk about the general problem or challenges behind security and why you should worry about it, or even if you should worry about it, and what you can do as a user, what you can do as an admin, and what you can do as a developer. So I'm giving everyone homework assignments this time. In terms of what point of care is, this is kind of the goal, right? The immediate patient sample to treatment pipeline that I think people are holding up as the pinnacle of what we want to do with those like Illumina HiSeq things. So the idea here is you get a sample from the patient, and this is especially true of cancers because they tend to be extremely variable. You go ahead and sequence that sample, you run the analysis through Galaxy, and you're going to try to characterize the cancer itself. So there's going to be something about that particular thing that might give the physician some idea what kind of treatment would work best. Because with cancer, a lot of these things actually respond differently depending on where the mutations actually are, what actually is happening in the cancer cell. So why should you care? I'm going to go a little bit into data anonymity and de-identifying data sets, because this will all kind of tie into this whole human genome data is potentially a security hazard. So these are going to be like de-identified data sets. People don't usually consider pets or Galaxy role to be a identifier. But if we look around this room, raise your hand if you have 23 turkeys. Well, that narrows that down. So it only really takes one field for me to know that I love birds more than people, which is my embarrassing secret. A really great paper to read, which kind of gives you more on this, is the famous Facebook paper, where they released a bunch of public data that wasn't really so public, and people very quickly put identities to every person in that paper. There was also a scandal recently with OkCupid. Someone got a bunch of data off of there and released it to the public for consumption, and that's really not quite ethical. So in terms of data that you're looking at, let's say you have an entire human genome, and let's say for those fields, those columns, you looked at, say, SNPs. Now, if you took into account every SNP in this data set, you could probably pinpoint it to an individual. That's kind of where we're going, and if the powers that be decide that human DNA is protected health information, then we're all going to have to worry about this when we're doing human genomics. So let's think about security in terms of risks here. Here on the right, you have a cluster being stolen by a few gentlemen in a truck. Now, if you've seen the data center, those 18-foot concrete walls will probably keep this risk to a minimum. However, there is a tradition on campus here to have several statues stolen every now and then that are very heavy and very improbable. So I wouldn't put it past the realm of possibility. Now, the laptop being stolen while you're taking a nap in the library, that's a much more likely scenario. But in terms of cost, we built the data center to keep those millions and millions of dollars of equipment safe. So it's kind of a balance there. So when you're considering whether you need to worry about this whole Galaxy security thing, think about risks and think about potential damage. If you don't really deal much human data and you're running happily and your users are happy, then you might not really need to listen to anything I say. I'm not here to make you put your seatbelt on. I just want to put these options out there. And another point, if you unplug your computer from the network and turn it off, it's pretty secure. It's also about as useful for computing as a brick. So let's say that you do need to really lock down your Galaxy instance. You have collaborators who are working on human genomes, and you're dealing with health information. One potential solution is to actually unplug the thing from the network. Run everything on localhost. Do not mount external drives for your data. You can pretty much keep everything off the net so users can go in and log on to the machine that's doing the analysis, and everything is pretty secure there. There are cases, though, where you're a collaborator with a very large project, for example, like stem cell research or something, and you need to be very well connected in a shared environment. In that case, this isn't really such a great option. Or in our case, we got funding to make a public portal, and they would be upset if we just backed out on that. So assuming that now we need to go in, we need to have a publicly available, or at least external to the web, available Galaxy instance. Let's go over the easy stuff, what users can do. And this is going to be kind of repetitive because I'm sure you've all heard this before, and you're all excellent citizens as users, and you've never shared an account, right? So it's a problem that we've had for where people will share passwords, they'll share accounts, they'll log in willy-nilly, and you don't really know who's actually behind the wheel when that happens. You can try to log IP addresses to see where they're coming from, and maybe that will help, but there's also just a problem of you don't know who they told or where that account information is floating around. And some labs will do this, but it's really discouraged. Second thing is you need to let Windows 98 go. It's time. This is Internet Explorer for Windows 98. I actually found a version that I could install, and it doesn't run Galaxy. So use new browsers, update your operating system. Yeah. And something I think we're all told over and over again is to protect our passwords. Now, this is a phishing hook, and that's one of the more insidious ways that people get your passwords these days. It's not necessarily a sticky note like the one I have on my desk, but rather things that will trick you into freely giving away your password. And make it robust. Change it every now and then, and don't use the same one for everything that you do. Those will all help keeping you safer. All right, so for us admins, it gets a little more technical. You really want to go with the minimum necessary to do your job. And this is something that is mentioned over and over again in HIPAA as well. Don't go out of your way to get yourself in trouble, basically. If you have a file system, make sure that it's locked to the correct permissions. Don't make every file in Galaxy world readable, writable, and executable. Probably a bad idea. If you have database users, and I use Postgres for our Galaxies, have the database user for the job. So if you have an FTP server running, create a new database user that just can read one table. That's all you actually need, and it prevents an avenue of attack. And don't let Galaxy accounts stack up on your Galaxies, and don't let user accounts on the system running Galaxy stack up. Go ahead and purge those things if they've quit or gone on. And another thing with minimalism is if you don't need the software on there, you probably shouldn't put it there. I'm using World of Warcraft as an example. I know those big GPU machines could really be awesome if you installed it on there. And this is the second time that World of Warcraft is mentioned in this conference. I feel like I've unlocked an achievement. And again, don't go through people's files if you don't need to, and don't run everything as root. You can use sudo. That way you're tracking your own actions and keeping tally of who's doing what on your systems. Another thing that you might think about is encryption. When I was young, my parents didn't tell me that they knew Pig Latin. Does anyone else know Pig Latin? So they let us keep talking in our secret code thinking that we were really clever. But it's kind of similar to what's done today. It's like a secret code that's used to communicate in a private channel, right? The thing about it is, just like Pig Latin, people can catch on and they can crack these things. And some of the ciphers that we've used aren't as robust anymore. 1024 bits is kind of not so great. SSL2 and SSL3 have been compromised, and so has 3DES. So when you're thinking about this, use long keys, DSA or RSA, and use TLS on the server side, either 1.2 or when 1.3 comes out, use that. This is a picture of a web server and attempted logins from God knows where. This happens to every web server you'll ever see. So you can go through your logs and look because it's kind of cool. But to kind of keep this traffic down, you could consider doing what's called two-factor or dual authentication. We just moved to that here because of the HIPAA thing. So you log into a machine, and from there, you log into your final machine. And in the middle, you have to use your phone or some other way to identify yourself that can't be read through an email or any other way. There's also a ton of great resources out there. If you are stuck doing a lot of the sysadmin work, run your Galaxy through Qualys. It's really great and will tell you if your certificates are old or not in the right chain or any number of things. And it'll let you know if there are vulnerabilities. And when I put these slides up, I'll make actual links to them so you can click through it. There's also a bug track, which you can go and look for. These are as new vulnerabilities are discovered. So keep an eye on those things. Mailing lists for Ubuntu or Red Hat or what have you, and the Internet Storm Center. There's a bunch of sites that'll do this stuff. So let's talk about security weaknesses. A few things, again, about this password and account stuff. Right now, Galaxy supports 6 characters, and that's the security requirement. It doesn't force you to change your password ever, so you can leave it there for years. And those accounts that sit unused don't get moved in any way. They're still active. And you can actually hit that server over and over again to attempt password break-ins. And it won't stop you. So some of these things we worked on during the hackathon, and we have pull requests for. So look for that in the code coming soon. As for the unlimited login attempts, it's kind of cool. If you log in with your correct email address, it'll show you no such user or invalid password. Wait, I got that wrong. If it's fake, it'll say no such user or invalid password. If it's a real address, it'll just say invalid password. So you can get a bunch of usernames if you wanted to and try them all, and you would figure out what accounts exist in that galaxy by the message it gives you. And since there's unlimited attempts, you can just keep doing it. So this is homework for the devs, or I'll help if I can, and we'll sort of think about how to stop this sort of thing. All right, and I have to have a turkey picture in all of my talks. So this one was born yesterday. It's like a GCC birth. It's kind of cool. I should name it Galaxy. That would be kind of cool. So thanks to everyone who pays the bills, which is NSF, the NIH, and the Broad are all the Trinity Galaxy grant. And to all the people who helped me put all this information together, because I asked our sysadmins for a lot of advice, and I asked other groups as well for just general security advice. So while you're thinking of hard questions to ask me, I also put together a very confusing graphic that just shows all the points that you may want to be concerned about when looking at where users are coming from or going to in Galaxy. Thank you very much. I think I was the one manning the Twitter, so if you tweeted one. Okay.
So Galaxy itself is written by people, who are trying to pay attention to security vulnerabilities and things like that, and trying to do a good job. But I think maybe an even bigger problem is tool authors, and you're running essentially any tool that you install is able to execute arbitrary code, commands. Are there mitigations that you take or you think are even practical for that situation?
So I think for that sort of problem, they always recommend that you read the code. And I know how hard that would be to go through and seriously look for bugs. Testing it out on a virtual machine, I think, would be a pretty safe bet, just to see if it's doing what you expect it to do. At least that way you're less likely to harm real data or real users, if that makes sense.
Hi, nice talk. This maybe follows up on that, and it's more of a comment. It's like half a comment, half a question. Maybe for, so the arbitrary execution of code from the tools is certainly concerning. And then, some of these tools are fairly, large and, lots of files. And so isolating them on a virtual machine might be one thing, but maybe there could be some sort of a test that you can use maybe with a tool to see if A, it's trying to install software, B, what ports it's trying to access, or if it's trying to go, sniff around and do something. That might be maybe the easiest way. I don't know, what do you think?
So I didn't talk much about the firewall issue, but generally speaking, you should lock your ports and not have your open. So that'll help at least with web traffic that the thing might be doing. And if you're running Galaxy as a less privileged user, that might also keep it from escalating, causing all sorts of problems that way. And also shout out to the IUC, because they do a lot of just going through the tools and kind of vetting them for you. So if you don't trust the tool, get someone else to verify it.
Thank you.
Hey, Carrie, come back here. I'm the plant. You planted me unknowingly.
I was escaping.
Yeah. I know you've been thinking a lot about running Galaxy in cloud environments, which have some additional problems, as I understand it.
So the question was, would this have implications in a cloud environment? So a cloud environment is pretty much running a virtual machine in a lot of cases. Like, I'm very familiar with the OpenStack thing, but there's a lot of other ways of doing it. So you're kind of synthetically locked into this little sandbox. There's still ways I think you can really run amok, but it's a pretty safe way of doing it.